Democracy on Trial, Chief Minister Sengeh, the APC, and the Future of Political Pluralism in Sierra Leone. Good evening, and welcome to BAV Inside Salone. I am Ahisatu Kamara Kargbo, and tonight we turn our focus to a controversy that goes beyond party politics and strikes at the very heart of democratic governance in Sierra Leone. At the center of this debate is David Moinina Sengeh, the Chief Minister of Sierra Leone, and his sharp criticism of the All People's Congress over an alleged proposal to deregister smaller political parties that failed to win 2 consecutive national elections. This allegation, if substantiated, would represent one of the most consequential threats to political pluralism since Sierra Leone's return to multi-party democracy in 1996. Let's take a moment to watch a short clip from Chief Minister Sengeh's interview on Radio Democracy, where he addresses and criticizes the APC over the alleged proposal to deregister smaller political parties. When we return, I'll break down his comments with deeper critical analysis. Don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe to The Bold African Voice. Your support helps us amplify Africa's stories and voices.
The proposed, bill or amendment of the constitution we presently, then the plan for goods in parliament, I don't know if they don't reach with and they get a clause we say for the register small political party them or party we maybe 2 term is standing able to win anything. You are aware of that, or now see them put them together?
APC insists say before the register party then we no win. We refuse, then say no, because they get for good parliament. Section 35, I think, of the Constitution speak explicitly about political parties. It say the goal of a political party now for inform citizens about development, now for not so for win election. So if you believe in democracy, you not go say for pool party then we small or we not the win election. And APC puts this because they feel say all the other smaller political parties not important. They not believe in inclusive government. They not believe in, because of that I mean. I go assure you say with him, fet say no that enough for the APC insists say that
no. This allegation big because now I can at this meeting and now. The APC not in at the studio, but as I mentioned earlier, we producer don't they try for gets the chief negotiator for the APC. We not able to get them for come talk on the party in Biafra. Say the way they happen at the the tripartite steering committee. You there as the chairperson say. Now the APC propose say them for the registered political party them we don't come with a mixed feeling na the public sphere. Una in particular. Now the APC come up with this idea and how unite or divided the APC been there on this, as you say.
APC being united on this. We'll not go give to another name person wake out and because now APC. If na liar the lie, may APC pull press release the chief minister the lie. So let to them propose.
You get record or you get evidence?
No, because now conversation. Now I know they give say now this person I say this, but I can tell you say if APC don't believe say what they talking about when they pull press release say their APC they not agree with that proposal there.
The allegation and the political moment. Speaking during an interview on Radio Democracy, Dr. Sengeh disclosed that during discussions surrounding proposed constitutional amendments, a suggestion was raised, attributed to the APC, that political parties unable to secure electoral victory in 2 successive elections should be deregistered. The chief minister did not mince words. He described the proposal as undemocratic, deeply flawed, and inconsistent with the constitutional vision of political participation in Sierra Leone. Importantly, Dr. Sengeh stated that the ruling Sierra Leone People's Party rejected the idea outright, and his reasoning was not partisan. It was constitutional. The constitutional argument, Section 35, under the spotlight. Dr. Sengeh anchored his rejection of the proposal in Section 35 of the 1991 Constitution of Sierra Leone, which clearly defines the role of political parties. According to Section 35, political parties are not merely electoral machines designed to win office. They are constitutionally mandated to shape and express the political will of the people, disseminate information on political, economic, and social issues, contribute to national debate and democratic consciousness. In Dr. Sengeh's words, if you believe in democracy, you cannot say to deregister smaller political parties simply because they are unable to win elections. This statement cuts to the core of democratic theory. Democracy is not only about winning, it is about participation, representation, and the competition of ideas. The demand for clarity, APC called to account. One of the most politically significant aspects of Dr. Sengeh's intervention was his public challenge to the APC. While he declined to name specific individuals, he insisted that the proposal emerge from the APC as a political party. He therefore called on the opposition to issue a public disclaimer if the suggestion does not reflect its official position. This challenge places the APC at a crossroads. Either clarify and distance itself from the proposal, or risk being perceived as endorsing a framework that would shrink democratic space. Silence in this context may be interpreted as consent. Africa-wide comparisons, a familiar authoritarian playbook. What makes this debate particularly urgent is that Sierra Leone is not alone. Across Africa, similar mechanisms have been deployed, often under the guise of electoral reform, to consolidate power and marginalize dissent. In Tanzania, restrictive party registration laws and electoral thresholds have weakened opposition competitiveness. In Rwanda, the dominance of a single ruling party is reinforced by legal and administrative barriers that make it nearly impossible for smaller parties to operate independently. In Uganda, opposition parties legally exist, but are functionally constrained through regulatory pressure and uneven enforcement. Even in Tunisia, once hailed as a post-Arab Spring success story, recent legal changes have systematically dismantled pluralism by weakening electoral oversight and party competition. The pattern is clear. When smaller parties are erased, democracy becomes performative rather than participatory. Why small parties matter, the democratic ecosystem. Smaller political parties often serve as incubators of new ideas, platforms for marginalized voices, checks on dominant party narratives, training grounds for future national leaders. History across Africa shows that today's minor party can become tomorrow's governing alternative, or, at the very least, a conscience for the political system. To deregister them based on electoral performance alone is to confuse democracy with monopoly. The timing. Constitutional amendments and political trust. This controversy unfolds at a sensitive moment, as constitutional amendments are expected to be presented before Parliament, with electoral reforms at the center of the debate. At a time when public trust in electoral institutions remains fragile, following contested elections, observer reports, and ongoing political polarization, any reform perceived as narrowing political space risks deepening mistrust and instability. Reforms must strengthen democracy, not simplify it for those already in power. A forward-looking warning. If Sierra Leone proceeds down a path where political survival is tied solely to electoral victory, the country risks institutionalizing exclusion. The long-term consequences could include reduced political participation, radicalization of excluded groups, declining legitimacy of elections, increased political tension and instability. True democratic maturity is measured not by how easily winners rule, but by how safely losers remain politically relevant. Chief Minister David Moinina Sengeh has placed a critical issue on the national agenda, one that transcends party lines and speaks directly to the democratic soul of Sierra Leone. The question now is not only whether the APC will respond, but whether Sierra Leone, as a nation, will reaffirm its commitment to pluralism, inclusion, and constitutionalism. Because when democracy begins to fear competition, it is no longer democracy. it is merely power managing dissent. The role of Parliament, the last line of defense. As this debate moves from media studios to the floor of Parliament, the responsibility now shifts decisively to Sierra Leone's lawmakers. Constitutional reform is not an ordinary legislative exercise. It is a redefinition of the social contract between the state and its citizens. Parliament is expected to act not as an extension of party headquarters, but as the custodian of democratic safeguards. Any amendment that touches political party registration, participation, or survival must be subjected to intense scrutiny, public consultation, and constitutional vetting. Across Africa, history shows that the most damaging democratic reversals often occur quietly, through legal language, procedural votes, and technical amendments that appear harmless on paper but devastating in practice. This is why parliamentary oversight matters now more than ever: regional norms and legal obligations. Sierra Leone cannot ignore. Beyond domestic law, Sierra Leone is bound by regional and continental democratic frameworks. Under the Economic Community of West African States Protocol on Democracy and Good Governance, member states are obligated to promote political pluralism, inclusive participation, and fair competition among political actors. Similarly, the African Union's African Charter on Democracy, Elections, and Governance explicitly discourages legal or administrative measures that undermine multi-party democracy. Any attempt, real or perceived, to deregister political parties based on electoral outcomes alone risks placing Sierra Leone on a collision course with these commitments. And once a country begins to drift from regional democratic norms, it rarely does so in isolation. Lessons from West Africa: stability through inclusion. West Africa offers important contrasts. In Ghana, smaller political parties rarely win national power, yet their continued existence strengthens democratic discourse, policy debate, and voter choice. Ghana's stability has not come from eliminating minor parties, but from normalizing their participation. In Nigeria, despite its many democratic challenges, the legal threshold for party survival has remained a contentious but carefully balanced issue, often shaped by court interventions to prevent excessive executive or legislative overreach. These examples suggest a critical lesson. Democracy survives not because competition is weak, but because it is protected, even when inconvenient. The opposition dilemma: strategy or self-sabotage? For the APC, this moment presents a strategic dilemma. If the alleged proposal reflects internal thinking, then it raises uncomfortable questions about how power is envisioned, not just when out of office, but when regained. Policies designed to eliminate smaller parties rarely stop at the margins. History shows they often evolve into tools for suppressing all dissent. If, on the other hand, the proposal does not represent the APC's official position, then the continued absence of a clear public disclaimer risks reputational damage, not only domestically, but among international partners, democracy advocates, and the Sierra Leonean diaspora. Opposition credibility is built not only on criticizing the government of the day, but on offering a democratic alternative that inspires trust. The silent stakeholders, civil society, media, and the diaspora. Noticeably absent, at least for now, are strong unified interventions from civil society organizations, professional associations, and faith-based groups. Yet these actors have historically played decisive roles in defending democratic space in Sierra Leone, particularly during moments of constitutional stress. The media, too, carries a responsibility beyond reporting statements. It must interrogate implications, contextualize reforms, and ensure that technical constitutional language is translated into real-world consequences ordinary citizens can understand. And then there is the diaspora, millions of Sierra Leoneans whose economic contributions are welcomed, but whose political voice is often sidelined. Constitutional reforms that shrink political space at home ultimately affect national cohesion abroad. A broader pattern emerging? When viewed alongside recent controversies, electoral disputes, governance concerns, institutional trust deficits, this debate begins to look less isolated and more symptomatic. Across Africa, democratic erosion rarely arrives as a single event. It arrives as a sequence. First, the rules are adjusted. Then, participation is narrowed. Finally, competition becomes symbolic. Dr. Sengeh's intervention, whether one agrees with his politics or not, has forced this conversation into the open before it quietly hardens into law. The question that still hangs in the air. As Sierra Leone approaches parliamentary deliberations on constitutional amendments, one central question remains unanswered. Is the goal of reform to deepen democracy or to manage it? That question will determine not only the fate of smaller political parties, but the direction of Sierra Leone's democratic journey in the years ahead. The democratic paradox. Reforming the system by shrinking it. There is a paradox at the heart of this unfolding debate that Sierra Leone must confront honestly. Governments often justify restrictive political reforms in the language of efficiency, order, or serious politics. Yet history repeatedly shows that when democracy is streamlined by exclusion, it loses its corrective mechanisms. Democracy is intentionally messy. It is designed to accommodate dissent, fragmentation, minority opinions, and even unpopular voices. The presence of many political parties, even those that never win power, is not a defect of democracy. It is one of its core safety features. When reform proposals begin to equate electoral success with political legitimacy, democracy quietly morphs into a winner-takes-all marketplace, where ideas are discarded if they fail to convert immediately into votes. That is a dangerous redefinition. Electoral performance versus political value. One of the most troubling assumptions behind the alleged proposal is the idea that electoral loss equals political irrelevance. Across democratic systems worldwide, many parties exist, not to win national office, but to champion specific policy agendas, represent regional, ethnic, youth, or ideological interests, influence national debate through coalition pressure, shape public opinion over time. Some of today's dominant parties, both in Africa and globally, spent decades in political wilderness before breaking through. If historical electoral performance had been the sole test of survival, many ruling parties would never have existed. Democracy, by design, rewards persistence, not just popularity. The Sierra Leone context, a fragile political balance. Sierra Leone's political ecosystem is particularly sensitive to reforms that appear exclusionary. The country's post-war democratic recovery has been built on fragile compromises, reconciliation, and an understanding, sometimes uneasy, that political inclusion is preferable to political suppression. Any reform that threatens to narrow participation risks reopening old fault lines. Regional polarization, youth disillusionment, political apathy turning into unrest. In a society where political identity is deeply intertwined with history, memory, and survival, removing legitimate political platforms can have consequences far beyond the ballot box. The international dimension, donors, partners, and perception. Sierra Leone's democratic trajectory is not assessed in isolation. International partners, development institutions, and governance watchdogs closely monitor constitutional reforms, especially those affecting elections and political competition. Electoral credibility influences, aid flows and development partnerships, investor confidence, international standing, and diplomatic engagement. Even the perception of democratic backsliding can carry tangible economic and diplomatic costs. This is why constitutional reform is as much about external credibility as it is about internal politics. The dangers of precedent once opened, the door does not close. Perhaps the most overlooked risk in this debate is precedent. If political parties can be deregistered today for failing to win elections, what becomes the threshold tomorrow? Failure to secure a minimum percentage of votes? Failure to meet financial benchmarks? Failure to align with national interest as defined by those in power? Once the principle of exclusion is normalized, the criteria inevitably expand. This is how democracies don't collapse overnight, but erode steadily. Why Dr. Sengeh's intervention matters beyond party lines. It is important to separate the messenger from the message. Dr. David Moinina Sengeh spoke as a ruling party official, yes, but he also spoke as a constitutional actor and public intellectual. His insistence that political parties exist to shape political consciousness, not merely to win elections, reflects a broader democratic philosophy that transcends Sierra Leone's immediate political contest. In a region where ruling elites often remain silent in the face of restrictive proposals, public rejection, even from within government, matters. It signals that democratic guardrails still exist, even if under strain. The public question that is growing louder. As discussions continue behind closed doors and public statements remain carefully worded, ordinary Sierra Leoneans are beginning to ask a fundamental question. If smaller political parties are silenced, who speaks for those who already feel unheard? Democracy is not only measured by who governs, but by who is allowed to speak, organize, and disagree without fear of erasure. And as constitutional amendments draw closer to parliamentary debate, this question is no longer theoretical. It is becoming urgent, practical, and deeply political. The responsibility of citizens. Democracy is not a spectator sport. As this debate unfolds, it is tempting for ordinary citizens to retreat into cynicism, to dismiss constitutional reform as elite politics far removed from daily struggles. That temptation must be resisted. Across Africa, democratic decline has often succeeded not because citizens approved of it, but because they disengaged from it. Constitutional amendments shape who can organize politically, who can contest power, who can speak without fear of legal erasure. When citizens remain silent during these moments, decisions made in Parliament echo for decades. Sierra Leone's democratic survival, like that of many African states, ultimately depends not only on institutions, but on civic vigilance. A message to African leaders. Power is temporary, systems endure. To political leaders, both in government and opposition, this moment carries a deeper lesson that extends beyond Sierra Leone. Across the continent, leaders often design rules with today's advantage in mind, forgetting a simple truth. Power rotates, but laws remain. Any legal framework that weakens pluralism today can be weaponized tomorrow by opponents, successors, or even internal rivals. History across Africa is replete with leaders undone by the very systems they once defended. True leadership is not measured by how effectively competition is eliminated, but by how securely it is accommodated. Strong leaders do not fear open political space. Weak systems do. Africa-wide advice. Democracy must be protected early, not after collapse. From Senegal to Zambia, recent African experiences show that democratic resilience depends on early resistance to restrictive reforms, not post-crisis recovery. Once political exclusion is codified, courts struggle to reverse it. Civil society becomes reactive rather than preventive. Elections lose meaning before losing form. Africa does not suffer from too many political parties. It suffers from too little tolerance for competition. Final reflections from BAV inside Salone. At its core, this debate is not about the APC or the SLPP alone. It is about whether African democracies will continue to evolve toward inclusion or quietly regress toward managed participation. Chief Minister David Moinina Sengeh has raised a question that demands national and continental reflection. Can democracy survive if political legitimacy is defined only by winning? The answer, history tells us, is no. Key messages from this analysis. Democracy is more than elections. Political parties exist to shape ideas, not just to win office. Smaller parties matter. They provide alternative voices, accountability, and long-term political innovation. Restrictive reforms set dangerous precedents. Once exclusion is normalized, it expands. Parliament and citizens are the final safeguards. Silence today becomes regret tomorrow. African leaders must legislate with humility. The rules they create will outlive their power. A final word to Africans, leaders and citizens alike. To citizens, defend your political space before you are told it no longer exists. To leaders, build systems strong enough to survive your absence. Because democracy does not disappear in a single moment, it fades when exclusion becomes law and silence becomes normal. This has been BAV Inside Salone with Ahisatu Kamara Kargbo. If democracy is about choice, then shrinking political space shrinks the future itself. The debate unfolding in Sierra Leone raises urgent questions for Africa as a whole, about power, participation, and the rules we leave behind. Thank you for watching The Bold African Voice. If you believe in bold analysis and African-centered perspectives, like the video, share it widely, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss a story that shapes our continent's future.